Hi, my name is McLean Wilkinson, co-founder and CEO of NuCypher. NuCypher is a security and encryption platform that's body armor for big data. The amount of data being generated today is absolutely staggering. It's coming from everywhere, and much of it is highly, highly sensitive. Businesses not only have to protect themselves, they also have a responsibility to properly manage and safeguard their customers' and users' data. Let's take an e-commerce retailer like Amazon as an example. From the moment you land on their app, you're generating hundreds of data points. What you're clicking on, what you're looking at, how long you're staying. All of that is ingested in real time, along with the details of any order you make, your name, address, credit card number. That's analyzed for insight into your behavior as a consumer and aggregated with millions of other customer accounts. This explosion of data, along with the associated storage and computational demands, is driving much of the underlying IT infrastructure into the public cloud. Organizations are scrambling to stay agile and competitive, wanting to provision new servers and new services in minutes, as opposed to the weeks or months it takes on-prem. But moving outside of the organization's four walls presents an entirely new set of security and compliance challenges. And while there's a huge ecosystem of security tools provided by both startups and incumbents, many of these tools are built for the past and are focused on the wrong problem. They promise to protect you from getting hacked in the first place, providing network and endpoint security to keep the bad guys out. This might have worked, this is like the legend of the little boy plugging a crack in the dam with his finger. It might have worked when you had a small amount of data to protect, but now you have oceans of it. There are too many cracks, and you only have so many fingers. The bad guys will find a way in, around, or through your walls, and you will get hacked. And when that happens, your data is still secure with NuCypher. You need to embed security into the data itself, and that's where encryption comes in. But traditional approaches, although they provide protection, also come with significant performance and functionality drawbacks. They're like the original Iron Man suit hacked together with scrap metal in a cave. Secure, but bulky and unwieldy. NuCypher provides that same level of protection, but without the restrictions. Flexible, powerful, and secure, NuCypher is the Iron Man Mark 46 for your data. With our patented proxy re-encryption crypto system, NuCypher protects your data wherever it goes, both on-prem and in the cloud. NuCypher guarantees your data can be accessed only by valid users, and if an unauthorized or malicious attacker breaks into your cluster, all they see is encrypted gibberish. We do this by embedding access controls directly into the encryption itself. Let me show you a demo of how that works. Here, we have a data engineer at a global financial institution running Hive queries to analyze financial transactions. Simultaneously, a malicious nation-state hacker has broken into the cluster using root privileges stolen from the system administrator. Keep in mind, root privileges means he has full unrestricted access, and this is a live operational data set. To verify this, we can see that the data engineer's legitimate query has just successfully completed. But when the attacker attempts to view that same data, he discovers everything is fully encrypted. Even though he has full root privileges, thanks to NuCypher, the master decryption key never enters the cluster, and all he can see is encrypted gibberish. We're a team of software engineers who've worked at Morgan Stanley and built infrastructure tools at LinkedIn. Our CTO is a physicist and scientist from the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology, who previously worked in an area closely related to quantum computing and cryptography. We're working with one of the leading proxy re-encryption researchers in the entire world, and our technology is compliant with standards bodies like NIST and FIPS. Our founding team previously built ZeroDB, the world's most popular open source encrypted database project. And we are incredibly excited to build NuCypher into the de facto security layer for the $35 billion cloud infrastructure market. Security and compliance are the two biggest blockers to the adoption of big data and cloud technology in the enterprise. And by solving these constraints, NuCypher can modernize much of the underlying IT infrastructure on which the world's most sensitive systems operate. And we're already proving this with some of the world's largest enterprises, including multiple Tier 1 investment banks, global technology companies, and telecommunications firms. In addition to launching our company at TechCrunch Disrupt, we've also released open source versions of our Hadoop and Kafka offerings that are now available on GitHub for engineers who want to build enterprise-grade security into their big data projects. We are NuCypher, a security and encryption platform that's body armor for big data.
All right, judges, who do you view as your competitive landscape in kind of the market that you're going after?
So there's a couple ways to look at this. One is the platforms that we support, Hadoop, et cetera, have data protection built in to some extent. It tends not to be robust enough for the requirements for some of our enterprise customers. Another way to look at it is data masking and tokenization companies like HP Voltage, Protegrity in Europe, those sorts of folks.
What are the what is there performance degradation at all or what's the impact of the performance?
Sure, it's actually pretty minimal. These days, most encryption is hardware accelerated, so you may see a couple percentage points of performance hit, but pretty minimal. Where you get stuck with traditional approaches to encryption, particularly in a big data or cloud context, is latency.
Yep.
So if you're talking between a node and a KMS, that's where you really, particularly if you have the KMS on-prem and the cluster up in the cloud, that's where stuff really starts to fall over. And that's the problem that we're solving. So we remove all that latency.
Given that encryption technologies are not new, right, have either you or the investment banks that have utilized you had any third party do an objective comparison of you versus other encryption technologies, vis-a-vis latency and other performance characteristics?
So we actually use existing standardized encryption algorithms, so we're not rolling new crypto. Okay. So one of the hardest pieces for us from an R&D perspective was getting our proxy encryption to work with like NIST-certified elliptic curves, for example. And that was also a very important thing for our customers. So we're using sort of standard tried and true encryption primitives that have been in use in the industry for a while.
So when you say that you've got a variety of top-tier investment banks utilizing your software, are those beta tests? Are those multi-year? You know, how long have they been tested? How long have they been used?
Sure. So right now, that's pilot POC stage.
Okay.
We do charge for pilots.
To reduce sort of friction in marketing this, I mean, obviously, if it was embedded with an AWS or a cloud provider, it would presumably scale much faster, or perhaps they're your largest competitor. I mean, how do you think about that, and have you been working with the cloud providers?
Sure. So we've been very conscious to build our stuff so that it interops with existing tools that people are using, whether it's Hadoop distributions from Cloudera's, Hortonworks of the world. We plug directly into that. We've also been working on deeper integrations with Amazon's, for example, big data stack. So they have EMR, which is their version of Hadoop, Kinesis, which is their message queue like Kafka. And we do have support for several of those and more in the future. So we do view it as a channel partner.
Right, okay. Would you partner with them? Would they adopt it? Would it be integrated would they be your largest customer?
So with Amazon, most of Amazon's customers that are using EMR are running it on top of S3 as opposed to HDFS, which is the file system that most people use Hadoop for. And so we're working on, well, we have EMR running on HDFS right now. We're working on getting it to work with S3 as well. Okay. So once we have that, I think it'll be a more meaningful opportunity.
Okay.
So is this most relevant, I would assume, in private cloud applications rather than in a public cloud application? Meaning AWS, presumably, as more data goes to public clouds, the public clouds are obviously building their own security layers. So is this, and not to say that the market size isn't big enough in the private cloud, but that's the way we should be thinking about where you're focused? So
I think we have several use cases. Some are standard like data protection regulations. Probably the biggest use case for us right now is this cloud enablement. So if you're a large enterprise, you have very much higher security and compliance requirements than a lot of startups here that are using AWS.
Yep.
One of the things, for example, they want is being able to keep the keys on-prem, even if they're storing and processing data in the cloud. So they won't use like AWS Cloud HSM key management, because if Amazon has the data and the keys, and let's say Amazon gets subpoenaed by a regulatory agency, for example, it's game over.
Right.
So they want that segmentation between the data and the keys. So that is a big use case for us. Yes.
And do you have a sense of what your pricing model is going to be yet? Is it going to be based on amount of data, server?
Yeah.
What's going to
so two ways or two approaches. One is for people that are running it on-prem, term-based subscriptions on a per node basis, and then also for the people that are running it in the cloud, it's more of a consumption-based model.
So let's assume, I mean, almost any company in your space is being built on the premise that at some point the network is going to be compromised. So describe to me just like a basic, don't have to go too complex, but a basic scenario where a company running your security layer has their data compromised. What happens, and how does your product protect them from further damage?
Sure. So let's say you're running a data lake on Hadoop, and an attacker breaks into the Ranger node or system administrator and can basically at that point give themselves access to the entire cluster, even if you're using transparent data encryption or these standard encryption tools. With NuCypher, we sort of split the trust, so that the system administrator can manage access controls, but he can't actually see any of the underlying data, so he doesn't have a golden key, for example. So even in this case, if someone breaks into the cluster, even if they compromise the system administrator, they're very limited in what they can do. So they may be able to get access to anything the system administrator has access to, but if you've done it correctly, the system administrator doesn't have access to anything. And in that case, they would be pretty much out of luck.
So kind of basing, if you look at your competitive landscape, how do you size the market for your market in particular?
Sure. So I think this is still something we're working through. So a lot of the big data platforms that we're particularly excited about are some of the newer ones like Kafka and Spark, which are just sort of starting to get meaningful adoption and are less mature than Hadoop. I think if we were just to look at Hadoop and set aside sort of the future growth opportunities for what we do in the future, we could score around like $2 to $3 billion based off of kind of the letter of intent pricing we have in some of our agreements.
How did this idea come about? Why did you decide to spend your life trying to solve this problem?
Sure. So I mentioned in our presentation that my co-founder and I originally built something called ZeroDB, which was an end-to-end encrypted database. There was an open source project that was pretty popular with developers and engineers and the Hacker News type people. And we went to banks as sort of a test customer to try to pitch them on using it for things like data archiving in the cloud. And during those conversations, they kept asking, hey, can we use this? Can we apply some of what we built for this to our data lakes? Can we do heavier weight computations, more involved queries? For ZeroDB, the answer was no, but they kept pulling us in that direction, so we eventually figured out how to take some of the technology from ZeroDB, which was this proxy re-encryption piece, and start applying it to these big data platforms. And that's sort of the route and how we ended up here.
Why hasn't someone done this before?
So I think it's challenging from a couple dimensions. One, it's not just a straight engineering problem, so the science and R&D behind proxy re-encryption, particularly how we've gotten it to work with standardized and certified encryption algorithms, was pretty involved, and as well as how we've applied it specifically to these big data platforms. So we hold patents on all of those. So how standard encryption algorithms, application of proxy encryption to Hadoop, to Kafka, et cetera.
How long will the average sales cycle be to these particularly, mission-critical security firms that tend to like to test things for, significant time periods?
Yeah, so that's definitely the hardest part of our business. It's a very long, complicated sales cycle. Particularly with banks, it could be you could be looking at 18 months on the upper end, or even potentially longer. Even for non-financial services, it still could be quite long. We're very much an enterprise sales, top-down model, selling into the CIO and the CISO.
How many people are at NuCypher?
7 right now, so 2 founders and 7 people total.
So, are you familiar at all with 41st Parameter that got bought by Experian?
I'm not.
I was just curious if you look at their business model, which is also kind of focused in similar type market, but really focused more just around e-commerce as opposed to the types of companies you're around. There's an embedded network effect in their business because, in effect, if you're a customer of them, the fact that other people were able to look at a common database made each new customer more valuable. Does your business have any kind of a network effect like that?
So not on a first order. We do have an interesting use case around sharing of sensitive data. So some of our customers, particularly the technology companies, are looking at creating shared industry data lakes where multiple customers and partners are all contributing data to this pooled resource of data and compute, but they want to bring their own key, so they don't want to give their data just in the clear to whoever's running that shared data lake, but they want to be able to delegate and revoke access to others. So you can imagine like a KYC, know your customer shared data lake for financial services, many similar things like that that would have some degree of potentially network effect.
Got it. Thank you.
So why better than be safe? And if you look at their description, it's very similar to yours in terms of the technology and employment.
Be safe?
Be safe.
I'm actually not familiar with them.
Okay. Okay.
Any final questions? All right, give it up one more time for NuCypher.
Thank you.